I don't usually think when lines keep dropping that it's a conspiracy, but when somebody like Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer's coming on, this stuff starts happening. Because believe me, they don't like him coming on this show, talking about Benghazi, any of it. I mean, our guests get subpoenaed by the Justice Department, you name it, on Benghazi. I mean, they are listening right now. So he may not even be able to be on today. We'll see. We keep trying. It's busy. He gets on. It disconnects. So we'll see what happens with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer here today on the broadcast. Speaking of what's happening right now with President Obama set to speak tonight, announcing reportedly expanded military operations against ISIS that's been openly armed by NATO and others, and with Benghazi weapons. That has now been admitted to, even by top generals on Fox News. Obama is set to ignore Congress and announce the Syria strikes tonight. Congress was trying to consult with him so they can be part of the decision. And I tell you, I won't cry myself to sleep at night if ISIS gets bombed. The question is, Congress is supposed to be in charge of this, then the president execute. He is not consulting Congress. This article out September 10th. President Barack Obama is set to ignore Congress once again by launching military strikes inside Syria without consulting lawmakers, a move that threatens to inflame the entire region, given that Assad government has repeatedly insisted it will consider any military activity inside Syrian territory as an act of war. Yeah, I mean, this will set the precedent for U.S. aircraft to be bombing inside Syria, who our government a year ago was trying to overthrow so that the coalition of radicals, 60+% being al-Qaeda affiliated, that's even the Pentagon's admission, could take the country over and blow up every church they found. It just doesn't hold water. It's bizarre. And it isn't bomb ISIS in Iraq, more than a few bombings a day that looks like it's just for show, like Clinton blowing up the Nigerian aspirin factory when he got caught lying about Monica Lewinsky. It really reeks of wag the dog type stuff, what's happening in Iraq. This will probably be on top of the presidential headquarters. They'll claim Al-Qaeda's in there or something. Really amazing. I wanted to get Tony Schaefer's take on it. We'll see if that happens. President Obama is prepared to use U.S. military airstrikes in Syria as part of an expanded campaign to defeat the Islamic State, and does not believe he needs former congressional approval to take that action, according to people who have spoken with the president in recent days. And you got different Republican leaders coming out and saying they agree with that. Obama is set to deliver a primetime speech tonight, during which he will make the case for U.S. airstrikes inside Syria in the name of targeting ISIS militants. Is he going to bomb them on 9/11? Is this all wag the dog from Benghazi revelations that are coming out? I think undoubtedly it is wag the dog, but wag the dog away from what? What are they trying to distract and divert away from right now? And will there be this fabled terror attack that we are being told is coming inside of the United States on or before 9/11? I know this, there better not be any terror attacks, because this government's going to be held responsible, at least by the public, I think, for having wide open borders while all this goes on and giving them the Stinger missiles. Guys, relax. If you can't get him, it's no big deal. We'll get him tomorrow or something. Appreciate you trying so hard. I see you guys stressed out. I know the audience wants to hear from him, but it's not that big of a deal. Oh, perfect. As soon as, fantastic. Now, again, a lot of things have been happening over in the Middle East. It's a fluid and complex situation. But I know this. Al-Qaeda was supposedly defeated pretty much a few years ago, and now we're told the son of Al-Qaeda, IS or ISIS, is taking over the whole planet. They're going into Africa. They're going to the Middle East. They're going into India. They're showing up in the Far East. They're supposedly in Mexico. Is that true? And what is NATO's real policy when they help fund this very group to attack Syria in the last 2 years? I know that he's been critical of what's been happening in Syria, backing these rebels. We have Lieutenant Colonel Tony Schaefer on, who is also a best-selling author. He's the guy that testified in Congress about Stratus Ivy, the last line is his latest book. He's written nonfiction, but the last line is fiction, so I guess he can get more stuff in there and not have it censored. And it just went into paperback. Again, it is a New York Times bestseller and has 4.5 stars on Amazon. And I've read the book. It's excellent. Just throwing that out there. Colonel Shaffer, thank you so much for coming on with us today. We've obviously got a lot of questions for you. Where should we start? The president's coming up tonight claiming he's going to strike ISIS inside Syria. What happens if Syria gets upset about that? They said they'll consider it an act of war. I thought we were backing these very rebels in Syria. What's happening?
Well, we were. I mean, that's the grand irony here. And one of the things I'm hearing, Alex, is going to be, I think, troubling to your audience and to you and me both, is the fact that he's going to ask for like $500 million to fund these so-called militia. And so I'm calling it the Guarantee of Adversary Act of 2014. So we will guarantee to have enemies trying to kill us for the next 10 years based on the fact we'll be funding them. That's how insane this legislation is. Because if you like what happened in Libya, that's what he's trying to do. And so I have no confidence at all of what he's going to talk about tonight. As a matter of fact, I literally just left Capitol Hill where we've been meeting with members and staff and had a conference on an alternate strategy we're trying to put forth that we're going to make it public. We're not going to hide our intentions to try to get some sunlight shined on this. But to your point in the opening, Alex, the very people that are now the president's going to talk about trying to kill and roll back are the ones that had he gone about conducting the airstrikes, destabilizing the Assad regime last summer. Had we done that, they would now be in charge of all of Syria, and they would have had not only the army they've stolen from Iraq, they would have had pretty much the whole Syrian army, which is it's not an unformidable force.
Well, we're even hearing from the family members of one of the journalists who reportedly had his head sawed off by these crazies that it's the so-called good rebels in Syria that sold him to ISIS. And I've seen Pentagon numbers of 65% of the jihadis there in Syria are al-Qaeda or ISIS linked. What's the numbers you've got?
The numbers are higher than that, and I don't want to get into it because I've been told exactly what they think they are, and I have to stay away from that. Well, let me just tell you they're higher. And this is the concern that you and your audience, I think, really need to internalize here, is that funding these guys fundamentally may well help destabilize Assad, but when they're done with Assad, they're coming back towards us. There is no good to be had from funding these militia. And as you point out, Alex, rightfully, that these so-called allies, these guys that we were working with, sold the journalist, one of the American journalists, into ISIS for purposes of their own making. So let me be painfully clear here, there are no good radical Muslim militia. Anytime we fund something like that, it will come back to bite us. One of the policy points we just made to members in Congress here, Alex, is the fact we have invested in a workable military organization in the Middle East. These consist of militaries that we have helped shape: the Egyptian military, the Jordanian military. These are all militaries which we've invested in. They have sent officers to the military academies, to the war colleges. And for goodness sake, why would we not want to work with them, such as the Egyptians, who right now, by the way, Alex, are doing what we should have done in Libya? The Egyptian military is now trying to retake the cities we allowed al-Qaeda to take in Libya, and they're engaging in against these very sort of militia in the Sinai Peninsula, trying to help the Israelis out. So again, we tend to actually do damage to the very allies we have, such as the Egyptians, and yet we fund these guys, and what we see here are again the tragic results of journalists being beheaded. And I was in the meeting with the Syrians who have been displaced by ISIS. I was in a meeting with the Christians yesterday who were and Alex, let me be clear here. They don't want to come here. They just want to have help regaining their 5,000-year-old cities who they've lived there in peace for thousands of years. They want them back. They don't want to come here. And yet somehow we have allowed for this ISIS to destabilize the region. And again, it's not like they're going to just take Assad out. They're going to try to establish their own state, and they're going to come here to kill us next.
All these years, supposedly, to take out al-Qaeda, being backed by Saudi Arabia and others, and now they've got hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions, and we're told, oh, just give more money to the non-radical group that's the minority, and as you said, are radical as well. This sounds like more covert funding of ISIS and maybe a payoff to get them to stop attacking Iraq and to go back after Assad. I mean, there's got to be some real policy here, or is some covert policy, or is this really total ineptitude? Because I remember you here years ago when Benghazi took place on 9/11 saying it was an arms deal to get weapons to al-Qaeda. We just call them ISIS now. So give us the inside scoop.
The policy is one that's been heavily influenced by, I believe, what is the issue we should have been dealing with the past 12 years, Alex, which is something called the Muslim Brotherhood. As much as I think a lot of folks have been made to think that they are a moderate organization, they are not. And since last we talked, I met with General al-Tuhimi. General al-Tuhimi is the chief of intelligence for the Egyptian nation. He is a mentor of now President al-Sisi. And during my meeting with him, Alex, we spoke about a number of things. And one of those things is the Muslim Brotherhood. There are clear and concise reasons, Alex, that the Egyptians outlawed the Brotherhood. The Brotherhood have been the reason that while we have met al-Qaeda and defeated them in every tactical engagement for the past 12 years, anytime we have to fight them, we win. The reason that al-Qaeda has not been defeated is because you have the Brotherhood, who is essentially the feeding organization. They're the ones who are behind the scenes helping fund al-Qaeda, all along pretending to be a quote-unquote moderate organization. An organization, by the way, that is closely aligned to an organization called CARE, right here in the United States. The Holy Land Foundation was who were members of the Holy Land Foundation were convicted because of their links to the Brotherhood. The same Holy Land Foundation had members of CARE who were unindicted co-conspirators. So right there is all you need to know is that the fact.
Well, let me expand on that.
Yeah.
The monster growing the al-Qaeda and ISIS heads is the Muslim Brotherhood, Saudi Arabia, and others. And so every time you cut a head off, 5 more grow back.
Correct.
And then now, why would President Obama and NATO, because I know there's an internal fight going on, and it really made the military mad here in the U.S. That's why we got so much intel on what really happened from you and others. Bottom line, how did they think they'd get away with giving 15,000 MPADs to al-Qaeda and to other jihadis? How did they think when they're running around, Reuters is now reporting, and so is the Washington Post, that yes, they have U.S. M16s, yes, they have U.S. anti-tank weapons, yes, they have U.S. anti-aircraft weapons, and they're trying to claim, oh, they got them from the other Syrian rebels. Who is guilty for this in Washington? I know that's a dangerous thing to talk about, but I know that's what you are discussing behind closed doors. Who's to blame?
Well, the administration, this is bad policy. This is a combination of the National Security Council under Susan Rice, Alex, is the equivalent of 8-year-olds running around in Brooks Brothers outfits.
I'm sorry.
Seriously.
Sorry.
They have no clue. And then you have a radical ideology that, gee, maybe the United States ought to be taken down a few notches, and maybe if we just treat people better, they'll understand us. Maybe if we talk to them nicer and show that we understand, they'll be nicer to us. That is the thinking here, believe it or not. And what that translates into is hugely bad policy. You cannot believe, Alex, some of the nonsense I hear comes out of the National Security Council.
Well, when I see Susan Rice speak, I'm no military person, but I study military news every day. They talk like buffoons. A private in the Army would know more than these women do. I mean, and they're in charge of all this. Sorry.
Oh, correct. Yeah. So that's what we're dealing with, Alex, is that we don't have any adults in the room actually doing anything. And as much as I'd like to believe that they're going to figure out a policy going forward, I have no confidence tonight that this policy that President Obama is going to announce will actually do anything to deal with the Islamic State or ISIS, whatever you want to call it, in any substantial way. Because, Alex, fundamentally, they've been supporting the very underpinnings of the whole network. It's not simply about ISIS. It's about al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. It's about al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. It's about Ansar al-Sharia. It's a network, Alex, that sprung up from the fact that we never got to the root cause of this, which is the Muslim Brotherhood.
I just don't see how a president is going to get up on television and claim he's going to run some airstrikes against ISIS and then arm the other Syrian rebels who've been fighting side by side with them to then displace ISIS. I mean, from the perspective of Assad, he can't trust what Obama's saying. What happens if Assad starts shooting surface-to-air missiles at the U.S. aircraft that go in there for these strikes?
Well, that's going to be an interesting dilemma because backing up Assad is both Hezbollah, which is the essentially the other terrorist organization run by Iran, and our friend Vladimir Putin. And Alex, I don't know how closely you follow my Facebook postings. I know we're friends on there, but one of the things I've predicted is that if we don't act, you will see essentially a form of the Warsaw Pact establish itself in the Middle East, and you will see Su-25 Frogfoots, which is the equivalent of the A-10s, rolling in on combat missions in this area to defeat ISIS. So if we don't do it, you will see, once Putin's done with the Ukraine, I don't want to get into that right now, but that's a whole other bag of worms. He's distracted right now. Putin is with Ukraine. Once that's done, I would predict that you'll see Putin actually using military force via Iran to back up Hezbollah and back up his ally Assad if we choose not to do anything against ISIS.
Well, could you blame, and I'm not, again, saying Russia's an angel, could you blame Russia because Al-Qaeda and ISIS is saying they're going to attack Russia next?
No. And people who understand the 80s will reflect on the fact that while we were getting our behinds kicked in Beirut, once the Russians had some of their folks kidnapped by Hezbollah, and the Russians basically went back in and killed everybody and killed their families and said, you never touch us again or else we will do the same tactics to you do to us. And that stopped the Russian issue. The Hezbollah never touched the Russians after that again. Now they're essentially a form of ally. So, no, we have to understand, Alex, that even if we defeat ISIS, someone's going to defeat ISIS. There's going to be a power vacuum, and then that vacuum becomes the issue we have to look at: is what do we fill it with? And I've argued, and I met with again Yazidi Christians today who were talking about their plight. It's like they all believe that as much as ISIS is bad, the better of two evils is Assad, because Assad wasn't out beheading people. And I think as much as it may pain the president to have to go back against his policy,
sure,
we need to work with Assad on this, because otherwise we will see ISIS formulate its own nation, create safe havens. And I have no doubt that they already have at least reconnaissance folks here in the United States doing reconnaissance of targets for terrorist attacks.
I know you're not supposed to say, but from my sources, and I know you've got a lot higher level than I do, you're up there at the Capitol, that they have substantive groups here in the U.S., and that this could be a way to basically blackmail Obama, because Obama now knows if there's terror attacks, and Susan Rice and others help create this current group, that they're going to get the blame for it. Couldn't we have high-level blackmail already going on?
Oh, I'm seeing, Alex, the same basic patterns I saw right before 9/11 regarding our work, and you mentioned Stratus Ivy and Able Danger. I am seeing the same neglect, the same wishful thinking at the policy level, where they may have stealth here, but they won't really do anything to hurt us. That is what I'm hearing, and I think you have to believe. I don't know this for a fact, but you have to believe that there may be something like that going on, because what president, what policy-making body would ever allow known adversaries to walk freely within our border simply because they think that if we'll leave, if they leave us alone, we'll leave them alone. That was the naive thinking that resulted in the 9/11 attacks. And I'm telling you right now, it may not happen this 9/11, it may not happen the next 9/11, but we are literally allowing the conditions to be created which are going to allow the next 9/11, which I would predict is going to be far more severe, far more catastrophic than the 9/11 attacks that have ever been.
Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer is our guest, folks, and you can go to londoncenter.org, one of the think tank policy groups he's involved with. His site's down today because a lot of traffic, but it'll be back up soon, OperationDarkHeart.com. And you've got a bunch of big Facebooks. What's the main Facebook for people to visit?
Well, right now, I think, you and I talked about this last time when it first came out, and you mentioned it in the opening, the last line. And you were correct, sir, in that I can talk a lot more about stuff that actually goes on through fiction than I can and through the nonfiction, which you may be interested. Mark Zaid, my lawyer, and I are still fighting a First Amendment lawsuit against the government about the overarching redactions of information which was unclassified in the first book. But with that said, I would like people to kind of focus on the last line because it deals with the idea of terrorist organizations using the southwest border to penetrate the United States. And so one of those things that, and I actually talked to Governor Rick Perry about this recently, he's trying everything he can, I believe, to try to secure the border. I think those of us who have studied this and recognize the vulnerability understand that the southwest border, as much as kids coming across are a tug at our heart, Alex, the issue is not the kids. It's about the fact that other nefarious folks, drug cartels, terrorist groups are going to use the southwest border to get their people in here.
Sure. I mean, when did your novel come out? It's now gone like 6-8 months ago?
It's out. It came out a year ago in hardcover, but now it's out in paperback. And
sure. But the point I'm getting at is when I read the hardcover that came here, wow, time flies, a year ago before you came on, it was excellent. And I talked to you on air. I said, "This is real, isn't it?" You said, "Well, I can't say that or they'll stop me, but they won't let me publish the real book." But yeah, this is it. Since then, what about the optics of literally opening the southern border wide open, busing anybody across that wants to come across? I've been critical of Rick Perry on a lot of issues, but they've indicted him for holding back money from a drunk, crazy person while he is covertly trying to secure the border. I have to commend him and the state police. He's actually trying to secure the border, and he's been indicted. I mean, it's almost like the Democrats are secretly allied with al-Qaeda or something.
Well, this goes back to our conversation about the Brotherhood. Let me be very clear on this. The Muslim Brotherhood has penetrated every aspect of our governance, every aspect, Alex. They have influence in the media. They have influence on Capitol Hill. They have been able to go through in DOD, and basically the reason we can't call Islamic radicalism is because they have done this Orwellian thing. And I have a friend of mine who told me this, that the DOD was forced to remove all references to radical Islam because of Brotherhood influence over the FBI and DOD. This is not fiction. This is the way it is.
Well, that brings me to this point. I'm sure you saw the Fort Hood document came out last year. Fox News even picked it up where they said founding fathers wouldn't be welcome in today's Army when George Washington founded the Army. And then it went on, don't join evangelical groups of the Tea Party or you'll be disciplined. Since when can the Army say what you can do in your private life if it's legal and lawful? So Homeland Security says their main mission now is gun owners, veterans, conservatives, libertarians, and that radical Islam isn't even on the list. I mean, that is so crazy that they flipped Homeland Security completely on to the American people with the backdrop of the IRS now trying to shut down Breitbart and arresting Dinesh D'Souza.
Right, you're correct. And this has been their work behind the scenes. This has been a long-term, again, Alex, while we've been fighting al-Qaeda in the battlefield and winning, these folks have been working behind the scenes to subvert all of the governance we hold dear. And again, I hope your audience understands, I'm not being overblown on this. Their influence is real. And again, this is why General al-Tohini and now President al-Sisi outlawed the Brotherhood in Egypt.
I know you're not supposed to get into this because you can get in trouble because of the commander-in-chief, but those same people were interviewed by WorldNet Daily and confirmed Obama's cousin Odinga, the prime minister down in Kenya, is making all this money and is reportedly sending hundreds of millions up there, financing it, and Obama is directly involved.
Well, I don't know that for a fact, but let me tell you this little tidbit, Alex, that I think your audience needs to understand. Just a few days before I met with General al-Tohimi, the chief of Egyptian intelligence, John Brennan was there. John Brennan, our director of CIA. So one of the things that General al-Tohimi brought up to me is that he had brought up to John Brennan their issue with the Muslim Brotherhood. And al-Tohimi, the chief of their intelligence, asked John Brennan directly, why don't you help us attack the Brotherhood? Why don't you outlaw the Brotherhood just like we're about to do? And by the way, they have done it. And so al-Tohimi didn't really tell us what Brennan said, so I asked him, I said, with all due respect, General, what did John Brennan say to you when you said that, the Brotherhood's an enemy? What was his reply? He stiffened up, Alex, in his chair, looked at me sternly and said, John Brennan laughed in my face. Now think about that. Our director of CIA laughed at the chief of intelligence of Egypt because he was told that the Brotherhood is a threat. And that tells you...
Oh, the Brotherhood was blowing up churches, crucifying people, attacking military bases, trying to blow up the Suez Canal last year that forced the military to go after them. When they got power, they had a reign of terror in Egypt.
That's correct. And so but that tells you right there that John Brennan does not believe that the Brotherhood is a threat because he has been brainwashed by these so-called moderates who are really not.
All right, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer, best-selling author, researcher, the guy that ran the anti-Al-Qaeda bin Laden unit that was ordered to stand down, major whistleblower. He's on with us, still works with the Army War College and other intelligence groups. At the highest level, he's kind of graduated on from the Army now into other secret operations. And we got 4 minutes left with him. I want to ask you two things. What more we know about Benghazi, because everything you said right after it happened here turned out to be accurate. It's now all admitted. And what do we know is in the 28 censored pages of the 9/11 report? People that have seen it said it would bring down the whole system.
Well, two things. The big thing to focus now, Alex, is who turned off the response that night of Benghazi. We know it was turned off, and just so you know how the military works, once a credible act of terror is reported, all commands start, basically to use a Civil War term, right towards the fire. Someone shut it all down, and that's what we're trying to get to now. So that's going to be the focus of a number of folks, to include myself. Someone said no to rescuing those people. We want to know who.
There was an order to stand down. There is a cover-up. What did the president know? When did he know it?
That's it. That's what the focus is. As to the 28 pages, I've met with and talked to multiple members of Congress who read it. They are convinced the American people needs to see it. It has to do with information which is not convenient to the White House, either White House, the Clinton White House or the Bush White House, and it has to do with an ally who essentially looked the other way and allowed a lot of support for the terrorists who conducted the attack. And so that's what's in there. It's something that I think it's
all right, without really getting you in trouble.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah, but just to be clear, because this is what I've been told, that there was a cover-up, that Saudi Arabia was involved, and basically that's why there was a stand-down, because they didn't want to embarrass the Saudis, and that's why 6 of the 10 commissioners want it released. Is that right?
I can't confirm everything you just said, but I can confirm the Saudi is the name of the country which is being implicated, yes. And
do you think it's going to be released?
I'm working with a number of members of Congress and doing everything I can to help behind the scenes. I hope that they do. I know there's a coalition right now trying to get it released, Alex. I hope they get it released.
That's right. You're working with Walter Jones of North Carolina and Stephen Lynch of Massachusetts.
That's correct, yes.
Well, you guys don't need to fly on any small planes, I'll tell you that.
That's true.
You have a lot of courage. Let me just, in the minute and a half we have left, because, I mean, you really are, like you said, in Congress, was a rock star when it came to secret operations. How have you survived? I know you've been chewed out coming on this show and other things. I mean, is it because there's good people, white hats inside the system that are protecting you?
Look, I don't, just so your audience understand, I don't make a lot of money. I still struggle like everybody does. This is not like a glamorous business. People may think it's not. It's not. And I've had sufficient number of folks, Alex, who appreciate the fact I'm telling the truth as best I can to get people, you know, I think the American people are owed the correct and truthful answer. And one of my guiding principles, for better or for worse, is I don't believe there's an expiration date on my oath of office. So what I said when I first put the uniform on, to me, it still applies to even me as a retired civilian. So I'd like to believe that that's what, you know, drives me. It's tough to get up. This morning was tough to get up to face some of this stuff, Alex. But, you know, as best I can, I'm going to try to do what I continue to do what I think is best.
Now, you told me something off air that I know I can't get into, but you were just saying it's a very interesting environment right now on Capitol Hill.
Right. There's a lot of things going on behind the scenes. A lot of what is going to happen next is going to depend on who gets the Senate. So, you know, there's a lot riding on, you know, the fact that I think a lot of people recognize, Alex, that this National Security Council, this president have some real problems when it comes to national security. And I don't think they're going to be resolved unless Congress can get its own act together to help focus our national security. And the
answer isn't giving $500 million to the other rebels. Is the answer what Rand Paul says, bombing them in Iraq and Syria, working with Assad, actually getting rid of them, and not starting an even bigger war if we don't? A lot of news-making intel there, I'll assure you. Just confirming what's in that 28 pages. I've confirmed it with others as well. But I got to get my reporters busy on that, I'll tell you.
Celebrate the spirit of freedom and liberty upon which our nation was founded at InfoWarsShop.com. Molon Lave is ancient Greek for come and take it. This popular design combines both classic Greek Spartan imagery with modern M16 assault rifles. Now available in women's tees and proudly made in the USA. Celebrate the spirit of 1776 with the George Washington brass belt buckle or this incredibly sharp-looking 1776 hat. Badass. And be sure to check out the new arrivals at InfoWars Life, where you can prepare your body to perform at peak levels with Survival Shield, Nascent Iodine, Super Male Vitality, and Fluoride Shield. And wake up, America. Immune Support Blend is the healthy choice for the gourmet coffee lover. So get incredibly high-quality, freedom-based products and help fund the revolution at InfoWarsShop.com.